This week's episode of the Jewish Living Podcast is brought to you by Nishma Research. Hi, this is Mark Trencher, and we are very excited to be launching the first Jewish community survey on a whole bunch of issues relating to the coronavirus, how we're dealing with it, our shuls, communities, virtual davening, classes, and a lot more. So this is your chance to share your feelings with the community. If you want to take the survey, just go to the web link bit.ly/coronavirus-Jewish. Thank you.
The Queen's Jewish Link presents the Jewish Living Podcast, the show that examines the many facets of Orthodox Jewish life. Here's your host, Izzo Zwerin.
Remember back to a pre-COVID world? We'd just gone through another mild winter with barely any snow. We were coming up on Purim, and the Jewish sports world was transfixed on the story of the Yeshiva University Maccabees, who are now headed to the Division III NCAA Tournament for only the second time in school history. Led by star players Ryan Terrell and Gabriel Leifer, the Macs went on a 29-game winning streak after dropping their first game. And during their run to the conference championship and appearance in the NCAA Tournament, the eyes of the Jewish sports fan was transfixed on this team. Unfortunately, the pandemic in which we now find ourselves derailed any chance we'd have of seeing just how far this team could have gone, as not only their tournament, but the entire sports world has come to a standstill. But there's still a lot to be learned from their performance this season, and with me to discuss it all is this week's guest.
My name is Elliot Steinmetz. I am the head basketball coach at Yeshiva University for the men's team.
Coach Steinmetz and I will, of course, delve into this season and its ending. But there's so much more to talk about, including coaching the most talented group of players the school has quite possibly ever seen, and how they got a former NBA player on their coaching staff. And for the first time ever on this podcast, questions from our listeners. All right, Coach, congratulations. Not only having the Yeshiva University's most successful season on record, but also on a number of accolades earned by your team this year. I'm just going to run through them because I wrote these down. Ryan Terrell was named the unanimous D3 Player of the Year. Gabriel Leifer was the All-Met First Team, which is his second year in a row. Simcha Halpert was an MBWA Third Team, and you yourself won the MBWA D3 Coach of the Year, the D3Hoops.com D3 Coach of the Year, and the Glenn Robinson National Coach of the Year Award. That's quite a list of accomplishments in one season for you. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. We always talk about those as team accomplishments. I get my name on some of them, and Ryan has his name on some of them, and Gabe and Simcha obviously. But without our assistant coaches and the rest of our team, none of those things happen. But it's definitely a nice honor.
I'm really happy for you guys. It was pretty cool watching the entire, I guess, we'll say modern Orthodox world, but I've seen a lot of people elsewhere just got sucked into this from the time you guys started making your run in the conference tournament. Obviously, the diehard fans were in it way longer than that, but right. It's just kind of a cool thing watching it. I haven't seen that type of excitement since the Israel baseball team qualified for the World Baseball Classic. So it was kind of cool to see from this side of the world.
That's actually a really good comparison. We heard from people in all different walks of Judaism and all different backgrounds all over the world. I mean, and obviously since we've been getting Zoom requests for different schools from Canada and California and New York and just anywhere you could think of. So the support has been awesome. There's no two ways about it. It's one thing walking into a packed gym, which is awesome within itself. And we've had that pretty much every night for the last, I would say since the halfway mark of the season, our gym was packed for every home game. But then to get text messages and calls and the amount of people that are watching online is just really uplifting.
Yeah, I would also say your number one fan outside of the Jewish community seemed to be in the whole time was Bruce Beck. Seemed to have been covering you from the time you made your run. Even before that, I saw every once in a while there's a little snippet at the end of NBC4's nightly news about Yeshiva University and their team. But he seemed to have been there every night in your gym, just doing a live report from there. That's something you usually reserve for a pro team, but he was doing it for a D3 college team. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we had a lot of that this year, but Bruce was awesome. Bruce, I forgot what the first time he showed up for, what it was for. But he showed up at one point for one of the stories that was going on. It might have had to do with our assistant coach, who was a former Knick player, Mike Sweeney, who has been amazing for our program. And I think he showed up to do a story there, and then he kind of fell in love with the guys and fell in love with the program and what we were doing. And then he just kind of continued from there. And he'll text me now, ask me questions about the team, how things are going. Like, he seems like he got really into it, which was very cool. But he wasn't the only one. It was crazy. Throughout the year, we had all kinds of media showing up. We had one media outlet that was embedded with us for the entire second half of the season, in the locker room, on the bus, just really, following every aspect of what we were doing. And then obviously, as things kind of built up and as the season, turned into what it did with the conference playoffs and championship, it became more and more.
That's amazing. And honestly, we're going to get to all that, especially Mike Sweeney. We'll get to everything that you just mentioned, the team and the road that led you there. I want to start with actually at the end, with the disappointment and how the season ended due to COVID. Now, obviously, I want to caveat this by saying you guys aren't the only ones. All the pro seasons ended. It wasn't only the D3 tournament. It was the D2 tournament, the D1 tournament, NHL, NBA, MLB season hasn't gotten off. And really the entire world is suffering now. But I really just want to focus on your feelings. Now that you've had time to reflect, can you explain what your emotions were at the time the decision was made to suspend the season versus where they are now?
Yeah, and there's no doubt it was disappointing at the time, and we were literally on the way, pulling into the parking lot actually in Virginia to the hotel we were staying at. We had a practice scheduled at Randolph-Macon about 2 hours later on that evening. But literally, as we were pulling into the parking lot of the hotel, we got the Twitter feed came out from the NCAA canceling the remainder of the seasons. The NBA had canceled, like you said, the night before. The NHL, I think, was that day. Some of the Division I conferences in basketball had started to individually cancel their tournaments throughout the course of the day, and then obviously the NCAA followed suit later on that day. So it was kind of like hit us. I guess leading up to it, I guess there was kind of an expectation that something was coming. The question was really going to be when, and the NCAA had put out, or somebody had put out, that they weren't going to make a decision until the following day. So there was kind of hope that we would at least be getting in, that game on Friday afternoon, and then see from there. But then obviously the news hit, and we were all gathered in the hotel, and we had the guys come down for dinner, and I think everyone kind of expected me to have some kind of words of wisdom or something emotional to share. And there really was nothing. I mean, this is such a unique situation. It's something that's never happened before. I felt for our seniors, obviously, who were just, completely in shock that after all the buildup of the last 4 years of building this program into what we built it into, they turn around and there's nothing. So it took me actually a few days to really get to the guys and give them kind of a message. What I said to them was, and I said it in my social media also, there was really no sting of defeat. And there's no glory of victory, which is usually how your season ends. It's one of those two. Either you've lost your last game or you went all the way and you won. And at some point, you get to kind of have that closure and deal with it. This was, and the only thing I've been able to compare it to, this was like the ending of Sopranos, where there's all of a sudden that blank screen and you just don't know what happened. You have to kind of make it up in your head. Right. We kind of had that same feeling where we thought we were going to have a really good chance to go in and beat Randolph-Macon, and we thought we could go further. I'm sure they felt the same way about us. But there's no way to ever know. And as competitors, one of the things you like to do is you like to lay it on the line, and you like to compete, and you want to put out, you want to put that risk out there that you might lose, just to take the chance that you might win. And we didn't get to do that. So that was kind of the initial feeling, was just emptiness, and an inability to kind of finish what we had started. Whether it would have been a win or a loss, it would have been better than just this kind of empty feeling. Obviously, as time went on and, people were starting to get sick, and unfortunately people have passed away, perspective kicks in a big way. And you start to see very quickly, life is a lot bigger than basketball, and the world finds weird ways all the time to show us that. And this is, certainly a unique way.
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear that as a retrospective idea. A lot of people are suffering now. You mentioned people have passed on. And yeah, life is bigger than basketball. It still does not take away from the fact that you guys had this whole season built up on the hard work and sacrifice, and it was taken away from you. And it's not just taken away from you. There were 15 other teams that made it as far as you guys did. So we can't forget all of them. I'm not interviewing any of their coaches. I just have you here. But let's talk about your journey, you personally. Usually this is a question that I ask in the beginning, but I wanted to get the kind of COVID things out of the way. How does one become the head coach for YU basketball?
So my journey is a little interesting. I'm actually a full-time attorney. I have a law firm, Rosenberg and Steinmetz, PC, which is located in New York. We do we do commercial real estate transactions and litigation. I've been coaching, I would say, probably about 15 years now, maybe a little longer. It started off out of law school, where I had started a law job in a small firm in Westchester, and I was able to find a part-time on the side coaching gig where I was coaching one of the Yeshiva high schools in New York. And it was just, I had played in high school and college, so it was kind of a way to continue that passion and that competitiveness and be able to do it at the same time while I was pursuing my career. And that continued on between that and doing the Maccabees games, and then ending up at another high school on Long Island. Ultimately, I kept doing it until the yeshiva job came up, and when it came up, I was able to obviously apply for it, but also once I got the job, start my own firm with a partner, which allowed me to kind of continue to pursue my legal career, but also thanks to YU, be able to continue this passion of coaching on the side at even a higher level.
That's awesome. And you clearly have a knack for putting this type of talent together that could make it this way. This is your second time in 3 years you made it to the national tournament. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about recruiting. So firstly, you're hampered in a way, not only being in D3, obviously, but also having your talent pool limited to basically Jewish players, the vast majority of whom are Orthodox. So how do you kind of go around that, or not go around that? How do you play into that?
So when I started off, one of the things I told them when I was interviewing is you have an option. You can look at it as a detriment to recruiting, and the fact that we're kind of in this Jewish world, obviously, and those are mostly the kids that we're going to be recruiting, or you could look at it as a benefit. And I chose to look at it as a benefit. And when you look at some of the players we've been able to bring in, we have a definite advantage in going after some of those guys because of their background and because of the high schools they went to and because of the religious background they're looking to continue at the college level. And then the opportunity, of course, to play high level basketball. The key thing I think was to obviously start winning. And once we were able to do that, we were able to kind of raise the level of player we were able to convince to come. So whereas we might occasionally lose even some of the Orthodox kids that we were going after to, Division I programs or even other Division III programs, we suddenly became a higher level program that kids wanted to come and compete at. And then going further down, even some of the kids who were maybe a public school background or not necessarily an Orthodox background suddenly looked at us as a viable basketball program where they can go and really develop, whether it's, for the future in terms of trying to play professionally overseas or just the ability to compete at a high level at the, in the collegiate game. And we became a destination for that, which obviously upped the level of our team even further. And it's kind of just a snowball effect that we've been, over the last few years kind of riding.
Right. So 2 years ago, you made the tournament. I think that was the first time in school history. Now you're back making the Sweet 16, and who knows what would have happened beyond that. How do you see this helping you guys in the future with your future recruits?
So I think it's the same idea. I think, 2 years ago, the fact that we got into the tournament was a huge jump in terms of what we were able to do recruiting wise going forward. I think, the level of the season that we had this year where we didn't just get into the tournament, we didn't just compete in the tournament. We really had two dominant performances in the first two rounds. I think it's already to me shown some reward in terms of recruiting for this coming year. But I think, going forward, it's about being able to go out there and say, hey, we're a top 25 program, not just a competitive program. So it's just another, kind of chip that we're able to use when we're trying to convince players that, we're a good destination for them, both academically, obviously, and then, of course, on the competitive sports side.
Right. So you started this season with a loss and then rattled off 29 straight wins. So I have to ask you, what happened in that first game?
First of all, we played a really good team. Occidental is a very strong team. But at the same time, it was one of those things. It's the first game. A lot of our guys are California guys. They were playing in front of their home crowd for the first time, so I'm sure that was a part of it. we had a couple of our starters that were hurt in that game. Not that was an excuse. We had plenty of good players. But I think the combination of all those things added together, and then I think people tend to forget. Occidental had a great year this year. I don't remember what their record ended up being, but they were something like probably 18-5, something legitimate. I mean, they're a good team every single year, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to challenge ourselves and play them. But it was right off the bat an opportunity to learn a lesson and to find a way to get better. And obviously, our guys found a way to get better every day after that.
So obviously that was a joke question. I told my father-in-law I'd be having you on my show, and I asked him if he had anything he wanted to ask you, and he mentioned that first game, but he was more interested in what did you say to the team after that first loss that was so inspiring that got them to win another 29 straight games without a loss.
So it wasn't anything magical per se in terms of a motivational message. When we teach our guys and when we're learning our offense and defensively what our concepts are and what our philosophies are, we base everything on the concept of selflessness. We want our guys working to make everybody else better. And we don't have any selfish players at all. We just have been very, very lucky with the quality of kid that we've been able to bring in and recruit. So we don't have any selfish players. What I was trying to explain to our guys between game 1 and game 2, which carried through the rest of the season, was the difference between being unselfish and actually being selfless. And while they sound like the same thing, they really are, from a basketball perspective, in terms of what we were trying to accomplish, they're two different things. An unselfish player will work very, very hard to get himself open so he can get a good shot for his team. Right? He's not taking bad shots. He's not forcing a shot. He's not, turning the ball over. He's working very hard so that he can get a good shot for his team to succeed. That's an unselfish player. There's nothing wrong with that. But a truly selfless player is working hard to get his teammate a shot so that he can help the team. And then what happens is if you have all 5 players that are doing the same thing and they're all selflessly working to get the other guy a shot, you suddenly explode offensively in a way that you can't if you're just each working individually to get your shot, despite the fact that you're unselfish. And I think when that kind of concept clicked for our guys, which was an overnight thing, it really was. It was a conversation we had in the locker room after the game at Occidental, and then it was a conversation we actually had the next morning again at breakfast before we went to play Caltech. And I think when that kind of snapped into place, it changed the whole course of our season.
Yeah, that leads me right into what I was going to talk about, the couple of games that I watched. I was able to watch the Skyline Championship and the first 2 rounds of the tournament. Obviously, that's where it stopped. You guys shot an insanely high percentage from the field. It was over 60% in both games. So you mentioned how the selflessness kind of permeated throughout the team. But is that kind of a shooting percentage? Is that something you can maintain throughout the tournament? Or is that something that you're going to have to work to improve on? Or is that something that you're going to have to work to improve in other areas because you don't expect to be able to shoot 60%?
So you never expect to shoot 60%. I don't think it's something you can rely on. That's why we always talk about defense first, obviously. But we did lead the nation in field goal percentage this year. We shot 54% from the field over the course of the whole season. I don't think it was any fluke that those 2 games went the way they did. I think we were seeing 2 teams that had never seen us before. And I think that would have been the same case going down throughout the tournament. It's a lot tougher when you're playing in conference and these teams are seeing you 2 times a year, plus they're watching a ton of film on you. And they come in a little bit more ready for what you're trying to do. And even with that, we had the success we had, obviously, just because we had the talent and we had the selflessness. But when you start to play teams that are not as prepared for that, it automatically lends to an advantage to seeing that style play. It's a very, very different style. So no, we rely on the 60 to 65%, shooting from the field, but we won those games by over 20. So,
right.
I said to a coaching mentor of mine the other day after I had, rewatched the film of both those games a couple of times, I said, what's lost in the whole thing, from those 2 games and even the championship game in the Skyline, we were so good defensively in those games. And I think that gets kind of lost in the mix because of the fact that we were so good offensively. I mean, scary good offensively, that we really it didn't matter. But the truth is, we could have won those games even if we had not played as well offensively. If we had shot our average, let's say, of 54% from the field, I still think we walk away from those games a winner and in a pretty good way.
Yeah, Penn State, I don't know if people realize, but Penn State shot something like 55, 54% against Towson in their first round matchup. just to be
Hopkins,
just
yeah.
to sorry, against Hopkins in the first round. Just to get to you guys.
Right.
So like it wasn't like you were playing against a poor shooting team either way. Would have loved to see you guys go up against Hopkins in their home turf. What do you guys think about what do you think about the single game elimination? I mean, it's not something that's going to be your decision to make, and it's basically the way that college basketball is forever. But in your opinion, single game elimination versus a series?
I think at the college level this works. I mean, look at the excitement that the
Right.
NCAA tournament has in Division One, obviously, and that excitement is the same in Division Three. It might not be as widespread in terms of the viewership, although it's starting to get pretty wild. And those the games are all available generally, either televised or online, and they start to spread out the start time so that people can watch more than one game at a time or in a day. But I don't see it changing, nor do I think there's a reason for it. I think to have a series would require two things. Number one, it would be a lot less teams involved in the postseason, because you couldn't exactly have 60 whatever it is 64 teams playing,
Right.
and have them each have to play a series as you wind down. So you'd right away be removing a lot of teams and there's a lot more teams in college basketball than there are in the pros. In the pros, I don't know how many there are in the NBA. There's probably 30 something teams. In Division III alone, there's 430 plus teams. So you'd suddenly be knocking out a large number of the teams that are currently getting to play in the postseason, which would kill a lot of seasons a lot earlier, obviously. And the other part of it is the academic side of it. You're suddenly spreading out how long it takes to get through a postseason, whereas these kids are supposed to be, especially at the Division III level, they're supposed to be students first.
Right.
So we're trying to make sure that they're in class and that they're having time to study for their tests. And we had guys that were studying for midterms, on the way to and from these games. And ultimately, that's their main focus is school. So I think from the college level, the series is just not something that necessarily works as exciting as it is, obviously, in the NBA. For multiple reasons, but the excitement that the tournament has is unmatched. I mean, even at the NBA versus Division I level, I think there's a lot of people who would rather watch March Madness than the NBA playoffs.
I have a friend who takes off every year the first Thursday and Friday for March Madness from work, so he can watch those 2 days. Those are some of the best days of the year.
Yeah,
and you can't really
exciting.
do what college baseball does, which is like series and have a doubleheader in a day. Basketball doesn't work that way.
Right, it's a different kind of game, and
Right.
the baseball stuff is a little different. I mean, they have it as a double elimination, but it's not an actual series. I think they, if I'm not mistaken, I think they pod like 4 or 6 teams together, and then they kind of play out,
Right.
with a double elimination set until they get to the next round. So it does mimic the basketball tournament in a way, but obviously baseball is a different kind of sport where you're so reliant on a starting pitcher that it would be almost impossible to have, I would say, to have a competitively fair situation if you didn't have a double elimination.
So we mentioned a bunch of the teams that you have faced, that you were about to face. What other teams that were still left in the tournament that you could have potentially seen would you have considered your toughest potential matchups?
So Randolph-Macon, right off the bat, that we were going to see in the Sweet 16, it was the number 1 team in the country defensively.
Right.
So that we were excited for that, because we thought we were the number 1 team in the country offensively, and we were pretty high up defensively, not number 1 obviously, but we were pretty high up defensively. We thought we had it would be a really fun match. WPI, who we played in the first round, I think was number 5 in the country defensively, and we were able to get 102 points in that game, and we were kind of hopeful that we could not necessarily get 100 points against Randolph-Macon, but be able to show that our offense was really on a superior level. But that would have been a very, very tough matchup. After watching a ton of film, they were very, very good defensively. We liked our chances, and we would have liked to see the matchup take place. They would have been a real tough match. I think the following weekend, obviously depending on the winners advancing, Mount Union, who is still alive, looked, from what we had seen, looked very, very strong. And then St. John's also, which was on the other side of the bracket, we thought looked really strong. But I think with all the teams that were left, all 16 of them had a chance.
See, I'm able to ask you that question now because you're easily able to leave a team out, and there's nothing they could do about it once they see you. They can't get insulted by saying, "Oh, he left us out." Well, we were much better than he gave us credit for, but now you don't have to worry about that because you're not going to be able to see them anyway.
Yeah, and I think all those teams are aware. I think the parity in Division III this year was off the charts, and I think with the 16 teams that were left, any one of them could have gotten on a run.
All right, so I want to shift the focus away from this season, and look towards more of the Jewish basketball scene. When people think of an Orthodox Jewish basketball player, there's really one name that comes out, and that's Tamir Goodman. He had his Sports Illustrated feature when he was in high school. Bunch of accolades, bunch of nicknames, a lot of high expectations. What is his relationship to you and to the team?
So I mean, there's no actual relationship with the team. Him and I are friends. We have been for a long time. I'm a little older than him, but he's still somehow a role model of mine. He's just a superhuman being. Like, you can't find somebody with a more pure heart than Tamir. He has been over the years somebody who some of our guys who go for a gap year before they come to us, when they go to Israel, have chosen to go to him for training. And spend some time doing skill work and working out with him and having an opportunity to get better, which has, certainly been an advantage for guys who are spending the gap year in Israel and Yeshiva, when they come back, to have had that opportunity to kind of get some coaching and play and compete with him a little bit. But in general, he's, just another, name out there who's been supportive of the program, supportive of everything we do, always looking out for us in terms of players and watching games and encouraging us. So he's been awesome to be, to have around.
And I know that his high school coach, Chaim Katz, his son was on your team this year, Donnie Katz.
Yep.
And the Katz boys have been through the YU Maccabees rotation for the last couple of years, kind of a dynasty in that regard. So there could be some sort of, I wasn't sure if he had reached out or had some sort of more of a connection, but I do think that he did have a connection in bringing Michael Sweeney on board.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, the Katz family is awesome. Ellie's actually an assistant coach with us, and Donnie was our senior captain, obviously, this year, and captain the year before, and one of our leaders, and really one of the kind of backbones of the program we built. And his father, Coach Katz, is actually a mentor of mine and somebody I speak to pretty often, on the basketball side. Tamir had reached out to me over the last summer, and mentioned that he had Mike, out in Israel at his camp, and that he was, moving to New Jersey and looking for, potentially to get into the coaching world. And at the time was asking me if I knew anything at the high school level. To which my response was, if Mike Sweeney's looking for an assistant coaching job, I'll find him one at the college level with me. And it was a no-brainer, and it turned out to be one of the better decisions we've made. I mean, not even the fact, forget the skill work aspect of it. He's bringing, obviously, a guy who played at such a high level, both in college and professionally. He brings that work ethic and that level of instruction to our guys, in terms of skill development and bringing out the best in both our big guys and our guards in terms of what they're able to do from a development standpoint. But his leadership and his mentality and the way he talks to the guys, and kind of, the fact that he's been there and done that and all these things, it's somebody for them to, look up to, have a different voice, and kind of hear, a really important point of view. And I'm big on that. I like our guys to have different points of view and different voices in their head, and be able to learn from kind of different sources. And he's been a great one.
Yeah, and he's the only ex-NBA player to be coaching in D3, I believe. I don't think anybody else has something like that. Yeah, I mean, I saw that written in back in November. I don't think anything's changed since then. But that's pretty cool to have that leadership, that experience on the bench with you. I want to shift a little bit. Earlier this year, there were some headlines about the Brooklyn College volleyball team taking a knee during Hatikva. Was played before against their game against Yeshiva. So first of all, let's go this way. Have you experienced that type of a protest or any other forms of anti-Semitism while on the road at other schools?
Not like that. We have not experienced anything like that. I always say we've had nothing but class and respect from the coaches and the players that we've competed against, both in conference and out of conference. I've never once, over the 6 years I'm coaching at YU, I've never once had an issue with a player or a coach. We have had issues in the past, coming from the stands. That's happened. It did not happen this year at all. I don't know if it was a function of the fact that we had media presence everywhere we went, so people might have been a little more embarrassed to shout something out, or if it was, people finally maturing and growing up a little, which would be nice. But over the years, we've had that. Very rare. It happens though in a few gyms here and there on the road, where you'll hear something come out of the stands that's completely inappropriate. But it's not something that happened this year, thankfully.
Good. I'm glad. So what is your overall opinion about playing at Tikva before the games?
I like it. I've heard both sides of it. I think it's a nice touch. I think, certainly we also do have a lot of Israelis in the school, so it's and we've had them on the team in the past too, so it's nice for them to kind of have that little touch of home. But look, I think a lot of different schools choose to play an anthem other than the U.S. Whether or not it's a national anthem of a different country is something else. But if you look at this and you look at it as not just an Israeli national anthem, it's also a song of hope, and it's also it has a religious religious background to it. Before it was ever the national anthem of Israel, it was a song sung during the Holocaust and before. By Jews during trying times. So, I think that it's a nice touch for a pregame for our guys.
All right. So we tried something different with this interview. We've never done this before. We put out a question on Twitter and on Facebook. People had questions they wanted for you, and I'd like to go through a couple of those now. That's
Sure.
all right.
Let's do it.
Great. So the first one, I'm gonna be a little bit biased with this one. It comes from friend of the show, Don Zemmer, at Don Zemmer. I'd like to hear about the hotel incident early during Corona. So I'm assuming he's talking about the point when there was a positive case of Corona in YU, and you had an issue getting into your hotel. So if you could give us a little bit more about that.
What happened was we were like deep into the trip already. We were about an hour outside of Baltimore when we got a call from the hotel, canceling our reservation. I think their claim was they were nervous about it because there had been that one case, obviously, with a student from Yeshiva University, unrelated to the basketball team, and frankly, not even a kid who had been on campus in over a week. But at the time, I think, there was a lot of questions. And then, look, we're 2 months into this thing, and there's still a lot of questions. But their response was to basically tell us they were uncomfortable with us staying there, and they canceled our reservation. It was not so much the thinking behind it, because ultimately, from a health perspective, everything shut down within a week later or 2 weeks later. So obviously, they weren't so wrong to be nervous about it. The problem was they were only doing that to us. There was no like hold on anybody coming from New York City. There was no hold. If somebody from Wuhan, China had decided to book a room at that hotel, they would have given a room, and that was from the manager's mouth. It was specifically because we had been in the news and we were coming from Yeshiva University, and to me that just didn't feel right. And I made that pretty known, maybe a little too loudly in the media, but I made that very well known that I thought we were getting treated differently. I was very clear. I did not think it was per se religious discrimination. That was not where it was coming from. But it was certainly some form of discrimination where we were being singled out, based on a difference.
But you were able to find other places to stay, I'm assuming.
They actually helped us find another hotel. The hotel themselves actually were very, very, very helpful in finding us another hotel, which actually, ended up working out very well for us.
Okay, good. At least there was a little bit of a happy ending there.
Yep.
At Moshe_Kolat asks, what are the most challenging / rewarding aspects of coaching?
That's a good one. Challenging is probably, I said to a few people this year, and they laughed at me. This was the hardest team I've ever had to coach. We're 29-1, and we're for the most part blowing teams out. And our winning margin was, I think, like 16 or 17 or something like that a game. And yet this was by far the most challenging team I've had to coach. I think the challenges with coaching at the college level are on two different fronts. One, it's within your team itself. you're basically carrying 15 or 16 guys that were the best player on their high school team.
Right.
So they're used to producing, they're used to being on the court, they're used to playing time, they're used to shooting the ball, and suddenly you're basically telling, 8 or 9 of them, you're not going to be doing this at the level you were doing it in high school. You're not even going to be getting the same amount of time you were getting in high school. In fact, some of you are going to basically just be practice players, and you're going to be lucky if you get the amount of reps you're happy with in practice. And dealing with those, with those egos, and not in a bad way, but confidence, in terms of guys who have confidence that they belong on the floor, dealing with that and trying to still create that atmosphere of selflessness where guys can compete in practice, and try to, upend each other basically for playing time, but then come into a game and kind of have each other's back and support one another, and then be as happy with a victory, whether you were sitting on the end of the bench or you scored the winning basket, is a major challenge. And I think it's, I always admired guys like Joe Torre, for example, who was the manager of the New York Yankees, obviously during their, one of their major runs in World Series. To me, his greatness as a manager of that team wasn't about X's and O's and baseball decisions. It was about managing people, and communicating, and it was his ability kind of, to look a great player in the eye and say, hey, you're sitting today. And have that guy still look him back and say, no problem, no problem, Mr. Torre, I'm going to sit today. As long as we win, I'm happy. And I'm sure he didn't always have that kind of a response, but, the fact that he was able to not have it, ruin their team chemistry and the goals they were setting was an amazing accomplishment. And that's something that I try to do at this level as well when we have those kind of things. And that's, one of the major challenges. The reward is just the other side of it. The reward is seeing it happen. The reward was what were 16 legit college basketball players, competing in practice every day, showing up to games and being as lively as they were on the bench, supporting each other, and then being as happy, for themselves and their teammates with the win, from 1 to 16 in terms of playing time, all having that same genuine joy after a victory.
So it's funny, you mentioned Joe Torre in that aspect. One of the things that I loved about Joe Torre is that he himself had no ego. He was one of the few coaches that, I think, on his coaching staff, and after the dynasty, but following that, he had, I think, 5 coaches on his staff that were former major league managers. It showed me that he wasn't worried about having somebody on his staff that was going to overtake him, that was going to come in and say, listen, I could do this job better. He said, this is what we can do to win right now. These are the people that have the experience that could bring in that type of mentality that we need. And he wasn't worried about his own ego. And I kind of see that with what we were talking about with Mike Sweeney. If you look at your bench, like, well, this guy is a former NBA player, former first round draft pick, college star, seems to know what he's doing in the coaching. Why wouldn't we have him coach? It's not something that you're really concerned about, unless that's something that I'm bringing up to you right now that maybe you should be concerned about. But it doesn't seem like something you'd be concerned about, and you welcomed him onto your staff, and you're not really concerned about that type of a thing.
Yeah, people ask all the time about, what it takes to kind of build a program and to do the things that we've done. And, my answer is simple. You need to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. And I think as a head coach, that's the most important thing you could do. So yeah, I would agree with that. It's not, it's not about the credit. It's not about the wins and, it's not about the wins and losses attributed to your name. It's about getting to those wins and losses. It's about getting, as many of those W's as you can. And you got to be comfortable putting what you need to around you in order to accomplish that. So to me, I know what my strengths and weaknesses are, and I try to make sure I have people around me who are better than I am at my weaknesses and at least as good as I am at my strengths, so that I have people that, number one, challenge me in terms of decisions and challenge me in terms of the things that we're teaching, but also to fill in the gaps where I might have a weakness. For example, Mike fills that, and another assistant coach of ours, Daniel Tamir, who's been with us, who's also a pro, he played overseas. They filled that in terms of the skill development. Not my strong suit, not something I've ever, felt like I was, could I do it? Yeah, I'll work with my own kids in the backyard and work on skill development. At the college level, it's a different thing. And it's, not something that I've ever felt was my strong suit. I could do it if I needed to, but I'd rather bring in guys who are better at it. And, over the years, I've been able to do that. My first assistant coach was Yogi Verdugo, who I started this thing with, and, is now now doing skill development at the highest level. He's working with NBA players and pro players overseas. And I think the best thing I've ever done as a coach is probably not be afraid to bring in people who are smarter than me.
I feel like the next question, the person who asked the next question, at Brad Terrell asks, he actually has 3 questions. First one is, which YU player's father is the biggest pain in the ellipsis? I'm not going to make you answer that one. I'll make you answer the next 2. The first one is, what did you learn from the NCAA run this year that will help you prepare for next year's team? That will help you prepare next year's team for a championship run.
It's a good question. I think ultimately the ability to kind of stick with the things that we were doing throughout the year. I think the fact that we were able to build consistency throughout the year and build chemistry throughout the year, and that we didn't have to come into the tournament and change anything we were doing. So even if we had a lineup change here and there, the fact that our system was so consistent and that we weren't running, 8 million different things and 10 different plays on offense and 3 or 4 or 5 different defenses. I think the fact that we had, we have some stuff that we'll throw in to change it up, obviously, but I think the fact that we had a real strong base and guys who had not just been good at a lot of things, but were great at a few things over the course of the year, I think was a very, very big advantage for us, and something I don't think we had in past years. And I think that was directly, that was a direct reason for the success that we were having in those first 2 games. Being that the question is from Mr. Terrell, I think it's a pretty obvious also that it didn't hurt that we had number 11 on our side either, Ryan Terrell, who was shooting 65% from the field in 2 games and putting up 41 and 30 points in the 2 games. But again, Ryan will be the first one to tell you and talk about selfless. This kid's a superstar, and he'll be the first one to tell you that it's a product of the system and a product of the fact that his teammates, as well as he, are always looking for the best opportunity, and it just happened to be over those first 2 games. It was him.
Okay, so his next question is, I'm actually going to combine it with another question that somebody asked. His next question is, how are you going to make up for the loss of Simcha Halpert and Donnie Katz, 2 of his key teammates that are graduating this year? And also R0 Bert 0327 asks, what's the incoming class look like? If there are any exciting recruits?
Okay, so I don't think you're able to make up for lost players for guys who graduate, especially guys like that. It's not about necessarily making up what they do. It's every team kind of takes on its own personality. Every year since I've been coaching, whether it's the high school level or the college level, you're always going to the off season saying, "Oh my God, what are we going to do to replace our seniors?" My first year coaching at YU, it was Benji Ritholtz. After that, it was guys like Shelby Rosenberg and Mike Berg. And every year we kind of said, "Oh my God, we're going to lose these guys. What are we going to do?" And somehow we find a way to get better. And different guys step up into new roles, and the team kind of takes on a different personality that year, and your leaders step up. And I think the most important thing that we'll have next year, and you're talking about 2 iconic players in the YU program. I mean, these are the 2 guys who I first really recruited and convinced to come and do this, chase this dream of competing nationally and being in the NCAA tournament, were Simcha Halpert and Donnie Katz. But now, they've passed that torch to, guys like Ryan and Gabe Leifer and, others obviously on the team as well, who I think can pick up that leadership mantle and kind of bring us forward. So, I don't think we make up per se what they've done on the court, but I think, if we're able to bring in that leadership from, the next group of guys and have that same selfless attitude that we've had over the last few years, it'll take care of itself very quickly. In terms of incoming recruits, we don't generally, we're not supposed to talk generally about the individuals that are coming in, but we are very excited about the class that's coming in. We're still finalizing some of it, obviously, with everything going on. Things have been a little bit delayed, but we're excited. We think we're going to have a really good freshman class next year.
All right, no national signing day in D3, I guess.
I mean, guys will still do commitments and signing and all that, but it's not done at every. It's not really done as kind of traditionally as it is at the D1 level.
Okay. At Mayor Weasel asks, any discussions about playing home games at a nearby gym with a higher seating capacity to allow more fans to see higher profile games in person?
No, I mean, we play at home. We compete all season to have the right to play our postseason games at home, obviously, and it was tough this year. There's no doubt. I mean, there were hundreds of people lined up outside trying to get in, which is tough, and we'd love to be able to fit all of them. But Mayor can certainly feel free to write a check to the Blue and White Club and help us build a larger facility at YU so that we can host more people at our home games in the future.
That is a great plug. Joe Orbach on Facebook asks, can you get Randolph-Macon College to play a Sweet 16 game when it's safe to do so? I guess he's asking for an exhibition game.
So the season's canceled. So I think from an NCAA perspective, that would probably be impossible. There was actually some talk on Twitter by some of the Division III coaches about creating a player-only tournament for the Sweet 16 teams over the summer. I think that's kind of died down a little bit as this virus took on a life of its own. But it was an interesting concept, obviously, just in terms of a nice little opportunity for those guys to compete. Maybe one weekend somewhere. No, unfortunately, it's not going to happen. I wish it could. I'm hoping we'll be able to schedule them in maybe in future years and have a chance to play them. They're a great program.
All right, I would imagine that'd be a little bit difficult in the summer. Seniors graduate, they go on with their lives. People go back to different cities, different states, different countries where it's not just your program; it's all the programs. I can see that being a problem. Right. I had another question here. I don't know who it's from, but I will. I apologize to whoever asked that on Twitter. Somebody asked about the difference between your coaching style and your predecessor, Dr. Halpert.
I mean, it's honestly, I don't know that it's so much of a difference in style as much as the game has changed. The game's become a different kind of a game. There's a lot more up and down, a lot more 3-point shooting. So I think more than anything else, it's been that. I mean, he's somebody who had a big influence on me. There's no doubt. There's a lot of stuff I learned from him, certainly on the offensive side. I did get a chance to play for him for 3 years, so that was an opportunity to learn, and then obviously in future years discuss coaching with him. But I think more than anything else, the game has changed in a big way, and it's just about adjusting to that.
All right. So my question finally for you is, what's next for Coach Steinmetz? Let's put it this way. Have you considered ever moving up to D2 or D1? Have people even reached out?
No, I definitely have not considered it. I definitely get phone calls here and there, and I've not gotten any kind of offers or anything like that. I mean, it's definitely a conversation that's taken place that people have asked about. It's not really on my mind. I have my law practice, which I love, and I'm passionate about, and that's the bulk of my day. Every single day is dealing with my clients and commercial real estate closings, and continuing to kind of build that practice. And then I have this passion, and part of this passion is the opportunity to do it at Yeshiva and to be a part of that Jewish basketball world, which I love. So what's next for me right now is I'm focused on my law practice and trying to make sure that in this environment we continue to stay busy and keep our employees busy and keep ourselves successful, and then at the same time working on recruiting and finalizing some of next year's class and starting to work on practice plans and what we're going to be doing, obviously depending on the situation in terms of how we're going to be carrying forward in this kind of COVID-19 era, and just going one day at a time, trying to find a way to get better at everything I do.
All right. Is there anything else you would like to leave us with?
That's really it. I appreciate you having me on. I hope that these podcasts obviously are kind of a distraction for people who are dealing with a lot more serious things than the things we get to talk about in terms of basketball. I know you've had some more serious podcasts and discussions in the past, and I hope that this one, like you said earlier, is a little bit more light and something fun for people to have a chance to kind of take a chill and enjoy what we did over the course of the season.
Absolutely. Is there anything you'd like to plug? I give people opportunity to plug anything. If there's any way that people can learn more about YU Max basketball, where people can watch games, where people can get tickets, people can follow you on social media.
Sure. I have an Instagram account that I use, and I try to post updates about the season and different motivational things and different lessons and things that I've learned over the course of my career, which is at Coach_YU_Max. which is my Instagram handle. I also have a Twitter, which is @Elliot Steinmetz. People can always feel free to reach out on social media. In terms of YU, they have obviously, the Max Live, which does our games, which you can listen to the live broadcasts. I think they posted all the games on their YouTube channel, all the home games at least, and the NCAA games. So people who want to check those out certainly can. That's it. Obviously, there's the Yeshiva University Athletics website. If people want to check out the schedules for next year and the stats from this past year, they can jump on there and check it out.
I watched a bunch of games. You guys have a really good broadcasting staff also. I shout out to Akiva Poppers, who
he does
was commenting on a couple things. Really good broadcast that you guys have put on there. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun.
All right. Stay safe out there, and good luck next season. My thanks to Yeshiva head coach Elliot Steinmetz for spending some time with us this week. I asked him the question on the first game loss as a joke, but Coach Steinmetz not only had an answer ready, but was able to dive deep into what he remembered from that Game 1 loss and its aftermath. That obviously shows his competitive nature. Competitors love to win, but they absolutely hate to lose. And when you go 29-1, that one tends to stick out. Well, here's the good news, Coach. Next season, you'll have something to aim for. No pressure. In all seriousness, good luck to the Yeshiva Maccabees next season. We'll all be watching. To all our listeners, be sure to follow us on social media for more opportunities to ask questions to our future guests. We'll post opportunities on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For now, as always, Kol Tov.
The Jewish Living Podcast is produced by Swirly Pikus. Our theme song is The Band by A.B. Rottenberg from Journeys 4. You can email the show at jewishlivingpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at Jewish_living. The Jewish Living Podcast is recorded in conjunction with the Queen's Jewish Link.